Okay, we are live. Jason, thank you for joining me today.
Thank
Um,
you, Zach.
yeah, it's good to have you on. We met through mutuals, I guess. And yeah, pretty much today is pretty straightforward in the title what we're going to go over, but mainly focus on Japanese Pokemon. And then we can sort of delve into other things, other collectibles that are Japanese related as well. And I think also you seem to have particular experience with actually going to and from Japan multiple times. I've been to Japan. I went to Japan in April 2023 and I actually struggled. I mean, I found a lot of card shops, but it was just like it was difficult to really get especially as like a tourist to get that outside like, hey, can I look at these cards? And they'd be like, do you want to look at others? And I'd pull a bunch down and it was just a harder experience. Granted, I
Yeah.
don't go to many here, but we'll get into that. But yeah, let's start with you. So maybe if you could just quickly introduce yourself and I guess how long you've been into Pokemon or just collectibles in general, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, thanks for having me on, Zach. First time doing something like this. So, like I mentioned before, like if you have to do a lot of the heavy lifting tonight, I'm sorry. But
No, you're good,
yeah,
man.
my name is Jason. I sell Pokemon cards for a living. I sell on eBay. I sell at card shows. I do both of those full time. I've been doing this for going almost 5 years now. I
Wow.
started in 2020, like during the pandemic. And TLDR is in the years prior to that, I had a tech career in the Bay Area. And during COVID, I lost my job. I got laid off. So during that time, we're collecting stimulus checks. And I had like just like nothing to do. So got back into kind of like re-entered into Pokemon. But have had like a lot of other people, multiple entries and exits casually from like childhood as a millennial all the way up until now. And at the start of it, it was like very casual, opening packs during COVID. And then my one of the very first cards that really got me addicted again was Hidden Fates Jesse and James. Because during COVID, you have all this time. So I was consuming a copious amount of anime, and full art trainers like hit that spot for me. And then from there, it's just been a long-winded journey of learning, grading, sourcing cards myself, uh, looking at cards under lights for hours on end, sourcing cards from Japan, traveling to and from the country, picking up the language, building the eBay store to where it is now. Um, some really high highs and some bumps along the way throughout the journey. But yeah, been doing it full time as my only source of income for 2 years now. Uh, 2 years and 1 week ago was the exact date that I like left my tech job, like for good, for good. And then prior to that, I was juggling both cards and full time work or looking for work.
Well, that is very exciting, and there's definitely a lot to unpack there because I feel like there's not as many. It feels like since the pandemic, a lot more people have gone full time. But I mean, to live in San Francisco and be able to pay rent, you definitely have to be like. I'm sure there is some pressure there, at least at first, until you really got the store going. Like probably now you're able to have some cash flow, I guess, from that inventory. But yeah, let's definitely dive into that. So I wanted to just anyone who's hopping into the stream now or later, Jason at slowdownthankyou on Instagram. I left his links in the description. You can also find his eBay store, which I want to quickly show because he has some really cool cards. Is it sharing for you, Jason?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay. So I just sorted from your highest to lowest list, just because it was easier to find. But he's
A
got
little
some really
more
cool,
eye catching, I guess.
yeah, autographed ponchos. A lot of these creatures deck cards, which are very scarce and limited. I saw he had these winner illustration promos and a lot of other no rarity cards. It's very like that is the one thing that I will give Japanese Pokemon credit for is when they do promos, they absolutely crush them. It's insane. But yeah, Slowdown on eBay. He's sold over 9,000 items, which is crazy. So yeah, congrats on being able
Thank
to
you.
sustain this full time. I guess first things first, before we get too deep, I want to know where does Slowdown originate from?
Yeah, so before the store was called Slowdown, it was called J plus J Collection, which was just my initials with like plus, so like J
Hmm.
and J. But then I wanted something that like connected with how I felt about like collectibles, searching for things, and my hobbies. So other things that I like outside of like Pokemon cards is like vintage clothing and vinyl records and music. So in Japan, there's a huge focus on curation. And whenever I go to like certain districts to like search for clothes, and this was like pre-COVID and a little bit post-COVID as well when they opened the country back up, but I would always go to these stores, and if it was a new store, I can usually tell in the first like 20 seconds whether I knew I was going to spend a long time in that store. And for certain stores that like scratched that itch and they had a certain type of curation, whether it's like 1950s or 1960s Americana vintage or a huge selection of like niche Japanese rock band vinyls, I knew I was going to spend a long time there. And the thing is with like a lot of these stores in Japan, especially vintage stores, their store names are like very weird mashups of like English words. So like one vintage chain in Japan is called Step Ahead. Don't know what that means. Another store is just called like Safari. Just like very, very random. So for my store, I wanted something kind of like that too. But I also wanted to like have it touch the experience that I wanted people who were looking for cards in my store to also have, which was like coming to my table or coming to my eBay store and being like, wow, like this store has a lot of things that are really popular, priced well, but the store also has a lot of things that are just a little bit different. And maybe I want to stay here and continue looking around because there might be like this vending card that he has in the condition I'm looking for at a good price. But hey, look, he also has a VS series card as well. And next thing you know, like you've spent like 30 to 40 minutes either at the table looking at a bunch of different cards, which has happened before, or staying on the store for that long to like shop around and find things you haven't seen before. So slow down.
I like it, and I do like that. There's a lot of people are trying to open online stores or LGSs or whatnot, but it sounds like you did put a lot of thought into like how you wanted your store to be. I guess the branding for it. I want to quickly show just because you mentioned vintage phone cards. I saw this one too, which is a banger. But it says it's out of stock now, so I guess you may have sold it.
It's sold. So there's some interesting lore on this in the last like 2 weeks. I won't go into too many details about it, but I sold it at the Pasadena Front Row Card Show 2 weekends ago. And now on Instagram Reels, a prominent content creator has a reel with the buyer of that card, and the buyer basically
Oh my god, I literally watched it
had no
today.
idea what this is. Yeah, that it is
Oh
that exact
my
card.
god. That's funny. The irony of that too is he, that buyer before I have sold a lot of cards to him as well. Like,
He's at all the shows. He's
yeah, he's
he's at all
everywhere.
the shows. He's interesting guy. And maybe the last part to sum up this story is that I sold it to him 2 weekends ago at Front Row. And then last weekend at Card Party, he came back to my table asking me if I wanted to buy it. And then he does this like this double take, being like, "Oh wait, you're the one who sold it to me." I'm like,
Yeah,
"Yeah,
I've had that happen with him before too. But I nothing that big, but the same scenario. So that's funny.
yeah."
You seem to have a lot of supporters in the chat, so shout out to all these folks. I already pinned his comment, but Exo Snake, David, always collects, Jake. Sounds like they've all had good experiences with you. I don't know what this is. I don't know if this is an inside joke of this Vim.
It's
What?
a very, very expensive Japanese clothing brand.
Oh, I thought he was
Which
maybe
I
trying to type like Vivans or
No,
something. I
I
don't know.
may or may not have, an extensive Visvim collection as well.
So you collect vintage clothing, like I guess let's just quickly unpack that on the side as like your sort of more passion thing as opposed to Pokemon, which is more like
N
your. Are you
Not
able
as
to?
much anymore.
Okay.
When I was in tech and had, like, more time and more disposable income, like, that would be, like, the splurge. Like, I'm talking about, like, a $800 pair of loafers or, like, a $500 pair of jeans, that kinda thing. But, now in the last, like, 4 years, like, that kinda wardrobe has been set, but, that money needs to be put towards cards and grading fees and table fees.
Yeah, that's cool though. That at least you were able to enjoy it for some time. Were
Yeah.
you just to quickly ask? Were you like, did you do software engineering or?
No, so I'm non-technical, could not read or write a line of code. I was a product manager.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
That's what my mom does as well. Except I guess she's a
stressful job.
technical project manager, so she manages engineers, but yeah,
Yeah,
can't write a line of code as well.
I was not a good product manager, but I was a product manager.
Hey, you did good.
Thank you.
Um, okay, so we've sort of gone over, you do this full time, you have sort of a focus around Japanese cards. I did want to ask, do you have any exposure to English Pokemon at all, or is it just
It's very limited.
okay? You obviously don't find that in Japan. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. That's been the talk of the town recently,
Yeah,
frustratingly.
I can speak more to the English part, is that I only have, like, very, very specific English things. No,
Singles, I
really
take it,
nothing
mostly.
main set related. It's mostly, like, and honestly, like, I wave this around as a joke because I bought, like, 150 sealed packs of these back in 2023 when they're, like, $2 because, like, where are you gonna get a cheaper Gold Star? It's also an English exclusive too. I also bought the Light Toxtricity, the Dragapult, the
I
Mimikyu.
really like the light
I like all of them, and
toxicity.
the Hydreigon. They're all, and the Zacian. They're
The
all great cards.
Mimikyu. Is the Mimikyu a promo?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
all are. They're all part of, like, the set that they redid, like, the old concepts for. Like, they've never done that before, and it was in English, and
I really
I'm up
like them because they had
too.
like texture on the cards too. They were really cool.
Yes. I bought them by the brick. And then, um,
They're
other
not.
English stuff that I have is, like, sometimes stuff will come by the table, and I don't buy everything, I don't trade for everything, but if it makes sense, like, I'll do it. It's like, fine, I'll take it if I have to. And then I don't know. It's not visible on the sides, but, like, my room is, like, absolute chaos, and, like, some of the stuff in boxes is, like, English that, like, I bought when I first started and still have.
That's that's I'm thinking about this now. It's pretty funny because in my experience, and I think it's just a money thing, most vendors I've bumped into at these shows are like, I don't take any Japanese. I even do that myself. Not even because I don't like want exposure to Japanese, it's just because the price checking apps have not been like friendly towards Japanese, I guess. In terms of like TCG player became a standard for singles, but for the longest time they never had Japanese on there. And so everyone's using TCG player all of a sudden to price check their raw singles in person. It's quick deals and stuff. And I'm like, I can't sit here and parse through the Japanese stuff to try to get you like a fair offer. But I just wanted to say that's funny because I feel like you're essentially stating you do the opposite, except for maybe some exclusive English promos or whatnot. But you have better knowledge of the Japanese side of things. I just
Yeah.
want to quickly pin. So Connor, we've only been streaming for about 15 minutes, so you can either restart the stream now, just with the slider on the bottom, or you can rewatch it after. Jason's just sort of pretty much introduced himself, and we're just kind of getting into the meat and potatoes of it now. But Okay, so you've been doing it for 2 years full time, been doing it for 5 years total. Um, I guess, do you just do this by yourself, or do you have anyone else help you? Do you have family, friends, girlfriend, anyone, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, you know? But,
Yeah. This started completely, it's still mostly by myself. Starting from like when I started in 2020 up until August 2023, it was completely by myself doing everything. Every step of the process was done by myself. Everything was packed by myself, sourced, processed, list, everything. But from August 2023, I'd left my tech job in June 2023 and knew that once I left, I had a lot of flexibility open. And I really only had the eBay store at the time. I wasn't doing card shows yet. So I was when I decided that I wanted to operate the store remotely and begin spending more time in Japan, both for business and just like life reasons. Like you don't really get the chance to like spend like a ton of time elsewhere. Like
right,
now that you have the freedom of like owning a business semi remotely, you also don't have a family or significant other to like deal with. Not that it's a bad thing, but like
right.
the freedom's there.
I get it.
Um, so from August 2023, that was the first time I'd spent like 3 weeks like out of the country away from the store. So that was my first kind of like test run with having a friend help out with packing and fulfilling orders. And then from there, you know, my current assistant slash friend working with me has been uh, helping with the packing and shipping and even listing raw cards whenever I'm in Japan. And that was from I think January 2024 or 20 January 2024. So he's been doing it for over a year. He's been doing an amazing job, and he's a big part of like why like this business structure is even possible. And he works on an as need basis. So it's whenever I'm in Japan, and even more recently, he's also helped out with running my table at shows. So one thing I've experimented with from the start of this year is running two shows at the same time. So I would be in like a Las Vegas front row card show, and he would be doing East Bay with my stuff. And it's been more of an experiment. It's had some mixed results, but he's been an amazing help when needed.
That is cool. So do you, again, we don't have to get into the details, but do you actually have to, does he get like a W-2 from, like, are you his employer theoretically?
He's an independent contractor, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So
really
he
cool
like
though.
bills me hours and I pay him out.
Gotcha. So it's a little more straightforward, I guess, on the,
Yeah.
gotcha. Cool. So has he gone to Japan with you before to
N-
source?
no, so the sourcing all lives with me. So I guess like maybe to a fault, like I admittedly am like a control freak. Like if
But
they're
you
like
wouldn't show him the ropes?
really, if there are like really important things that involve like spending like my money and capital, like I prefer that to stay with me, like making those decisions on what cards to buy, condition checking. Like I'd rather that I'd rather be responsible for like the failures in that as well.
That's fair. So let's get into that a little bit more because when I went to Japan, the most expensive part of that trip obviously was the plane ticket. I think even though we bought ours, I went with my sister. We bought ours 6, 7 months in advance. I think it was like $1,300. So is that? I mean, I guess let's first start. How often do you go? Is it quarterly? Is it just kind of as needed as the inventory runs low?
So I in a way I kind of live there part-time. So I also have a place that I pay for monthly and it's like under contract, and I pay for it month by month, essentially year round, and I leave it empty whenever I'm not there. Cost of living there for American dollars is a lot lower. So like
Yeah, I
for
think the
example, my place there, the rent there is like $600.
I think the
So
dollar goes a lot further there right now,
it
especially
does.
too. So that's cool.
So I basically go there and come back as needed. Um, Preferably like in 2024, I was there for like a month at a time, I'd come back to America for 2 months, do shows, work the business, go back for another 3 weeks to a month. And legally, I have to be in America most of the year still. Like, you can travel there visa free for 180 days in 90-day stints. And then when you break that apart by month, you can kind of come and go as you please, as long as you're not going there for 3 months, coming back like for a weekend and going back in. It's pretty lenient.
And as long as you
So
don't go more than half the year.
exactly.
Hmm.
And that's across a 365-day rolling period.
Hmm.
So, like, I basically count the days of how long I've been in Japan and when I have to be home, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, so and then this year has been a lot more intense because the show schedule has been really, really aggressive. Like, a lot of my friends who do the shows with me from the Bay Area also know this. Like, we're like if a touring artist was at the top of like the most intensive like out of town schedule, like we're not far behind, like traveling every weekend. So from April of this year, or I guess like just to pull the curtain back the whole way, throughout this year in 2025, I was in Japan from January to the first week of February. I was home in America for February and March doing shows like almost every weekend. And then from this is where it gets kind of wonky. From the start of April, I was in Japan for 2 weeks buying cards and taking my Japanese lessons. I came back for 2 weeks to work a show. I went back to Japan the first 2 weeks of May to do the same thing. I came back for 10 days to do 2 shows. And at the end of May, I went back to Japan for 2.5 weeks to buy more cards,
Holy shit.
lessons. And then I came back 3 weeks ago and I've done 3 weeks, 3 shows in 3 weeks. So it's been a really, really intense stretch.
Do you think that sort of schedule is, I mean, it doesn't sound sustainable, but just like the back and forth between Japan in general, do you think that is sustainable even during like a lull period, let's say? Like, I guess what, and this is like totally off topic, but just what's your longer term goal for the vision? Is it eventually that you could just stay in Japan longer and have, part-time friends or employees essentially do most of that selling of the product you source? Or because it seems hectic to have to coordinate on that scale, and it's obviously very expensive. I know there's probably like a business expense aspect to that, but I'm just curious what you think. Like, what's an ideal situation look like 3 5 years
Yeah.
from now?
Ideal situation is to kind of operate as I was last year, where I was in Japan for longer stretches of a time to like it's just easier on the body.
Right.
Financially, it's not the biggest issue because plane tickets from the Bay Area are actually very cheap to go to Japan. Like, at its cheapest on Zip, you can go round trip for $600, and then like paying my rent is kind of like a fixed cost, and I can basically make back those two expenses in like one really good day of card shopping. And then I'm there for 2 weeks and doing that every day. So it kind of just like adds up and takes care of itself. The more non-sustainable issue is the toll it takes like on my body. Like it wasn't until like the end of April that I realized it wasn't normal to get sick like twice a month from all the travel. So the longer term kind of vision is to actually starting next year wind down the shows and do less shows.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense, I think. And do you think that would are the shows where you make the bulk of your, I'm assuming it's more of like every time there is a show you get a massive amount of sales, as opposed to maybe the eBay is a little bit more consistent but takes longer to trickle out, sort of thing?
Yeah, so I would say my sales for a year are still about 65% eBay, 35% sales. And it's a topic I'm extremely passionate about because the good thing about shows, and you probably know this too, working shows like in the Pacific Northwest, is that you work a show for a weekend and it's like this adrenaline rush of cash, like people ready to buy now. Like sales happen immediately. You work one weekend and you go home with all of this like revenue and it feels great. Whereas eBay is a bit of a slow burn, like it's very passive. Like you need to have a large amount of inventory and you have to be willing to sit on it. So they're kind of different, but I started this whole business on eBay. The business was built on eBay. It sustained itself on eBay until shows kind of came into play. And personally, in my opinion, I'd like to start to return to those kind of core roots.
Yeah, for someone who has very limited eBay selling experience, even when I did list, like when I say a lot of cards, this is like 40 cards for me. It is people are so obsessed with the fee. I don't think they understand like the value in being able to go to sleep and wake up and you have a sale on your phone. And it's like, all right, I'll just print the label, pack it up, drop it off at the post office. Like it's none of the back and forth sort of thing. You know, you lose your 13%, but someone's going to chip you down 5, 7, 10% already. So I think people overlook eBay a lot, but let's take a question real quick. Cause I see from Connor again, he says, how do you price Japanese cards? This is kind of what I brought up earlier. It's a very hard problem for me. Is there a Japan equivalent to TCG Player or anything? I would just chime in and say it's probably eBay is the only thing I would in 130 point, but I don't know if you have a better alternative for slabs. It's a little bit easier because alt is pretty good from my experience at matching even Japanese prices really quickly. But do you have suggestion for singles?
It depends on the card, to be completely honest.
So let's go with something super liquid or super lots of volume versus something more niche, maybe like a exclusive promo or not a poncho, like the phone card, for example. How would you?
So for something that's really, I mean, I have examples next to me. Well, like a PSA 9 Detective Pikachu. I'm just going to search up PSA 9 Detective Pikachu and go lowest list on eBay. And then for something like a super niche trophy, TMV Zapdos, it's like what you value it at. Because for those items with limited sales data, it's buyer willing, seller willing. This might be actually controversial, but like comps are just data points to go off of. They're not like rules to go off of selling. Like if you talk to anybody who sells on eBay or like got started on eBay, like everybody just talks about like the race to the bottom, looking at lowest list, trying to beat lowest list. Like comps are usually from like auctions when people have to like fire sale stuff off or like consignment items. But other than that, they're just data points to go off of.
Yeah, I would add again, I don't have experience with a lot of those $5,000-$10,000 plus cards, but even with the Marios, for example, like a lot of that stuff where you don't have data points, you can do it one of two ways. You start really high, you eventually get an offer and you meet somewhere in the middle. Yeah. Or what I think is probably used more commonly is we're in a bull market right now. Let's say that Zapdos hasn't had a sale for the last 2 years since 2023 or something. And the last sale was, let's just make a number, 5K or 4K or something, where there's just such a big gap between the last sale and now. I think probably what a lot of people do is just, again, they either start high or they're like, the market has kind of moved up, I don't know, 30, 40, 50%, and they kind of price it accordingly. Or that's what the next comp ends up being. We're seeing that a lot, I feel like, with like Gold Stars. And I mean, Gold Stars sells pretty regularly, but a lot of those vintage cards where they just gap up so aggressively, it's like you can't be too surprised by it. Some people will just be like, oh, well, the last comp was 200. I don't want to pay 400. And it's like, dude, there's, it's pop 35 or whatever. It hasn't sold in that long. It's just the way it is sometimes, but I don't know.
It really
I don't know
depends. Like, is your goal like to get rid of the item now, or do you actually not want to sell this? Like, are you not in a hurry to sell it? Like you said, like if it's in an environment where prices are changing so fast, like do you want to move it now and then see it go up $200 next week. Is it an item that you can't reacquire super easily? Like if it's something vintage, like a PSA 9 Masaki Gengar, like those, like you can't find those raw like that. Like if I had that card, hopefully I do in the next sub. I'm pricing it really high because I know like my ability to reacquire this like is extremely low, and it comes down to just me valuing certain items higher than maybe some people are willing to pay. But that's what like messaging someone is on eBay is for. Like you don't have to hit best offer. You can just send a seller a message and be like, will you take X? And I'll say yes or
Yeah,
no.
I feel like too with some of those Japanese cards, even if they're more modern, I mean the Masaki one, for example, like you're not gonna find the same way with like modern alt arts now. The nines for at least a long time, the nines were essentially equivalent to a near mint raw or almost the same, even slightly less. But like probably as you go older or more niche and less available, less easy to find, it's just to your point, you can't really price those two things the same. You're not going to value a nine the same that you would, a raw card that you were able to source for multitude of reasons. Either it's very hard to source it, or the nine, or it just doesn't grade well anymore. But here's an interesting one from Jake. Have you ever sold a card in person and then had to sell it on eBay before you could take it down? How do you navigate that sort of situation? This is definitely a question for you.
You hit out of stock and eat it. That's just part of the game. Like that's my mistake. I have to own it. It's happened plenty of times before. Like
They
out
can
of
still
stock.
leave you a bad review after that.
That I'm not sure because I haven't, like, if people go on my eBay, like my eBay is not like pristine. I have like 6 negatives and none of it's my fault, to be honest. Clearly, it's never my fault. I'm kidding, but yeah, like if it's out of stock, you just hit out of stock, and you just gotta own it. You can send them a message and just be like, hey, this sold at a show and you bought it right after, and most reasonable people will understand. Like we're not talking about essential goods. It's a trading card. You got your money back. You can go buy it somewhere else. And then what was I gonna say? The only thing it affects is like your top rated seller, because if you mark out of stock, you'll get a seller defect. And if you have like more than like a like 0.5% of seller defects on your profile, you lose like your top rated seller status.
Hey, could you explain that a little bit more? So why does the out of stock?
It's like seller standards. Like if you're
Is the
selling
idea that
something,
you would remove the listing before marking it out of?
ideally you mark it out of stock before someone buys it, and that's tricky. Because like you're at a show, things are going crazy, people stuff selling left and right. You just have to be really on top of what's selling and what your inventory is on eBay if you do have them double listed. In the past, there were suggestions from like other people in our space where like, oh, I mark everything out of stock before leaving for the show. It's so much work. Don't do that.
I think so. I've heard, and I can't speak to this personally. I don't know if you know, but I've heard there's a way to mark up your store a certain percentage. Is that true? Do you know if there's like a universal plus 10%, plus 20, because that was my thought, was like maybe you just increase the price of these cards. And that's another thing probably, is like if you're really competitively listed, like to match the lowest list, and then you go to a card show, odds are with the thousands and tens of thousands of eyes on eBay, especially with the popularity of Pokemon right now, your item will probably sell. So I would suggest either adjusting the prices beforehand, or um, yeah, just be aware that you're more competitively listed cards. Whereas if you're like in the middle of the pack or maybe higher up, you're less likely to run out of stock. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a few ways to go about it. Either way, it's just like if you're gonna bring cards to a show that you have listed on eBay, like just be on top of it. Just hold yourself accountable and do the right thing.
This is an interesting one. We'll take this one and then I'll ask you a couple other questions. Has there been any effect on the Japanese market with the recent release of Chinese cards? I'm curious to hear your take on this, because I saw, I don't, do you follow Twice Baked Jake?
No.
Okay. He posted a video recently that was kind of interesting, saying that like a lot of these especially these exclusive Pikachu Chinese cards have recently like gone up in so much price because like I guess a lot of this might be a stretch. A lot of other assets, I guess, in China were like struggling or like something where like you could park the money in Pokemon cards to like retain value. But I think at the end of the day, people are chasing just exclusive artworks. I do think the price valuations on them are like insanely ridiculous, but that could just be me. I don't know where you stand on them.
I want to say no because I'm assuming they're talking about the Chinese exclusive cards. So if they're Chinese exclusive, like there's no Japanese equivalent that could affect it.
That's a good
That's
point.
just my take on it. I also own and follow very, very little of this like new Chinese stuff. Like I love the artwork of like the Psyduck and the Gengar, those full art ones with the Pikachu, but like I just see like $500 price tag. I'm like, yeah, I'm out.
And the Mew is like,
Yeah.
I remember seeing it. It was like 3K when it first came out. I was like, that's insane. And then it
Yeah.
gapped up 2 to 3 times. But that one is very, very limited. And I think ultimately people are just maybe collecting artworks they like or following the trend. But I'm kind of with you on that. I'm not paying too much attention to it. It's great artwork, but it's one of those things where you start getting down the ladder in terms of like language popularity, and then also um yeah, I'm not comfortable sitting on those even just for the artwork when they're that expensive, when you're talking
100%.
500,000 plus dollars. So okay, let's get back to sourcing real quick. So your experience with sourcing, obviously. Do you have, I guess I wrote down like if you had any advice for someone sourcing Japanese cards. I want to layer that a little bit by saying, like in my case, when I went to Japan, it was mostly for vacation purposes because I wanted to go for so long. But I also plotted out a bunch of Japanese card shops. Do you have any suggestions for someone? Like I remember back then, I mentioned this I think in the last stream. I was trying to find at the time Mario Pikachu full art and the Magikarp poncho, which at the time those were like, I think the carp was like 1,200 US and Mario was maybe 15 or 1,700 or something. And all the stores that I was able to find it in, it was like at that exact price. Ponchos were still really popular at the time. They had their whole buyback list. But I guess maybe just in general, do you have any suggestions for maybe someone traveling there who's not from Japan or just visiting for the first time, if they're passionate about cards or Pokemon? Any tips you would give them for just finding stores, buying from store owners, that sort of thing?
It depends. Oh gosh, I hate how every answer I'm saying is like it starts with it depends. It depends on your goals. Like, are you here to like buy cards or search for a couple of personal collection items, or are you here to like actually like source inventory for your store? Because like you said, for your trip, like it was part of like a tourist vacation.
Yes.
And usually for most people, it's like their first or second time going, and everything is overstimulating beyond Pokemon. Like, yeah, the subway system, I don't know how to figure out this language that I don't know. All these people, all these subway exits, I'm lost. What do I do? And then beyond that, it's like you have this whole itinerary. You're probably traveling with like a group of friends or a significant other. So this is all this like outside noise you have to deal with. So again, it really depends on what your goal is. But for me, like when I'm there, like the job there is Pokemon. So like every day I'm going to shops. I'm rotating through different cities of shops. So maybe the tip that I would have is like if it's your first or second time there, stay in a central location that is like subway train accessible to the different cities that have most of the card shops. So if you're in Tokyo, I'd recommend staying actually in Shinjuku. Like for better or for worse, it's a crazy busy area, but your main subway line is going to be the Chuo line, and that extends from like east to west across Tokyo, and it does hit a lot of the main trading card areas, and that Shinjuku station allows you to go north and south to other areas that have trading card shops as well. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility and simplicity on your subway, like on your transportation methods. And that'll simplify things a little bit, but still, like Shinjuku Station, like it's an absolute dungeon of a station. Like you probably get, it took me years to figure out that station, and I'm there like all the time. Another tip I would have is I don't even know how applicable this is, but like it doesn't hurt to learn some Japanese. Like even if it's like learning the characters, to type in toreka, like Toreka in romanized letters, because if you search that on Google Maps in the katakana characters, it'll actually bring up all the card shops, and then you can like navigate the map with the pointer to get there. So maybe that's a more simple tip as well.
Is that the word for card
Yeah,
shop?
it's just trading card.
Gotcha. I don't remember how my sister and I did it. She is like someone who's traveled to like 15 countries at this point. So I got lucky enough where she knew that Japan was like on my bucket list since I was a kid, because I loved anime and all that. And she was essentially like, hey, I'm going to be back for this amount of time. I'll plan the whole trip. All you have to do is Venmo me for like the cost of everything. And I'm like, yes, let's go. And so we did Tokyo, and we stayed in Shibuya, which was, I literally got off the plane, came out to Shibuya crossing. Like this is like right when I was working from home too. So I had like not been like exposed to people for a while, where I was like, holy shit. Yeah, it's like 3,000 people on the sidewalk. So we did Tokyo for 5 days, Kanazawa for 2 days, Kyoto 3 days, and Osaka for 3 days. So it ended up being like 14 days or something like that total. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's like the greatest hits for sure. We're just going up and down the country. You probably rode like Shinkansen, the bullet train. Yep.
Yeah, she's really good at like planning like the overstimulating activity, and then coupling it with like a restful activity. Like we go from like the shopping district into like go to like a temple or a garden or something, so then I could like decompress, because I'm like, oh my god, there's so much stuff. But
that's awesome.
It was so fun. It was one of those things where like I didn't expect to enjoy it, because I'm not someone who would like living in New York or something like that. I'm very much like suburb type of person. But when you're surrounded by anime culture and good food and stuff, it's very easy to be like just following around. So yeah.
Japan does a really good job at like separating the really, really intense busy areas from like more quiet, like away from the noise areas. Like you could be in like you could be in Shibuya Crossing and then walk like 5 minutes and it's completely dead.
Yeah.
So that's one thing they're good at. And then maybe one last piece of advice is really hammer down what you're going to Japan for, because if this is a vacation, it may be best to just keep it a vacation, because in one, like let's say even if you planned out one day full of going to card shops, you might not even find what you want. You might leave disappointed. But if you're there like 4 cards to like go like a week straight of like only card shopping, you'll probably find some stuff and you'll figure it out.
Yeah, so that was my exact problem, was like I really only wanted those 2 ponchos. And so we'd be doing all these other activities, and I'm like, oh, there's card shops nearby, let's try and hit those. And it's like, no Mario, no Carp. And it's like, obviously that's, a lot of them are smaller shops too, where they just carry the new stuff and maybe a couple exclusive. The only cards I ended up getting, just to show you, and this is going to be funny because they graded so bad. So I got these 2. So this one graded a 9. I thought it would get a 10, but this one I knew was going to get like a 5. So this graded a 5. I think I paid it was like $4 or $5, some crazy stupid price. But these are like cards where they're like sentimental to me, where I would never sell them. The craziest thing about this one though is I think at the time the 9s were like $80 in 2023. Yeah. Now they're like 400 or something. It's crazy.
was a different time. 2023, you would buy that card at get a 9 and like break even, but like
Yeah.
in today's world, not
Yeah.
anymore.
Those are fun to see though in shops. Like there will be shops that have 10 copies of those, and you can just like really go through condition and stuff. But
Oh, not anymore. Now, like I'd go in the shop, I'd be lucky to find one, and it's
just
probably
random.
priced like between a 9 and a 10.
Yeah. The other cards that I was looking for at the time, actually, which I found a few, were I don't even remember. I think they're like this maybe spring battle road promos or something. The ones with they're half art trainers with the medals on them.
Yeah.
So they had like an Arceus Giratina one, Typhlosion for Alligator Meganium. I found all those, but they were all just like 8 to 9s. So I was like, dang it. But I kind of wish I still picked them up. But so I'm curious then to keep going with this. So you're sourcing a lot of items. Let's say, I don't know if you can give me a ballpark. You don't have to give me like a price value, but let's just say, is it in the range of like hundreds of cards, sort of? Or is it more like, I'm after the alt arts, I'm after XYZ, and so maybe I end up getting 50 to 100 really, or is it kind of depend trip to trip, depending on how the market's reacting to, or do you have a strategy?
It's deck boxes full of cards. And it
Okay.
depends on the trip. And I think this is what's important too, is like being able to adapt your strategy based on kind of what's happening. What I mean by that is if I were to think back to late 2024, like the English illustration rares were going really, really crazy. So like the second half of 2024, I was basically stocking up on like the less than $10 good ARs. And by good, I mean like Pikachu AR, Gengar, Dark Phantasma AR.
I think the
Stuff
Groudon
that's
was under there at one point too, right?
yeah, like
Let's see
stuff
how
that's
much
like out of print, kind of going away, but still cheap while they still are. And then going into 2025, like the raw prices of those like 2 or 3x. Like even the Zekrom, like that was like a 200 yen card for the longest time, so I bought a lot of that. But then also on the side too, like
Which Zekrom?
the VMAX Climax, the one with N writing the Zekrom.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So
the
just stuff
trainer
like
gallery one.
that. Charizard. That was like on one trip. Another would be like looking for good value in promos that have gone away. So like XY promos, Sun and Moon promos. It really depends on the trip. And I think what's something that's kind of evolved for like how I approach sourcing and my business in general is less of like, will this sell in a PSA 10 at X price? But now it's like, just where can I find good value across the whole spectrum of conditions? And that's kind of where I've been with regards to vintage in maybe the
Just to
last 2 or 3.
clarify, when you say conditions, you mean like whether it, like you just said, maybe it's out of print or it's not just like the actual card condition. Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. Like, well, also like condition as in like I'll buy it. Can I cuss?
Yeah.
I'll buy a fucked up card for like, if it like I bought a CD promo Charizard in Japan a few weeks back, and it was 3,000 yen, which is $20, and it was like a PSA 1. But like if you search like the lowest listing on eBay, like I don't think there are any under $100. So stuff like that is a no-brainer. Like especially in like at card shops, vintage that is like LP or worse, like you can find some really, really good value. And that's become like one of my philosophies for like how I approach my displays at shows and the eBay as well. So like I want it to be rooted in collectability, accessible collectability. And that's like a Shining Mew which my friends know is like has been one of the cornerstones of my store. Like in a PSA 10, even before this boom, it was a $3,000 card last year. But in lower conditions, in raw, like very presentable light play, medium play for the binder, it was like $100 to $200. But it's a shiny Mew also, and it's the first.
The Koro Koro.
Yeah, Kodo Mew.
Yeah.
It's like the very first shining. It has so much history. It's a 10 out of 10 card in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like just being able to have that for people who don't have the budget to get a 10 or even a 9 or an 8. Like I think that's really important. That's something I look for at card shops is like good value within good cards across the condition spectrum. I'm open to all of it.
I like that because, again, you're sort of answering Jake's question, but I like the idea that, some people it's just high end or whatever. But there is like something to be said about catering to like the range of people where it's like a lot of these card shows have just kids and their parents or whatever. They're not going to be able to afford the PSA 10 Koro Mew, but maybe their favorite Pokemon is Mew and they could get the PSA 1 or the raw damaged one or whatever. And so I do subscribe to that because, my setup, I don't really have a philosophy behind the table, but it has sort of always been this sweet spot of like $100 to like $300, $400 cards, just because that seems to be the most amount of turnover. I'd rather go for volume of turnover than just like these big sales. But with that being said, I do like sometimes I'll go for those $50 PSA 10 IRs or whatever, just because it's a really good looking IR and I know someone will be getting something for their kid or whatnot. So there's definitely like a range of options to display on your table.
Yeah, and that's what's really great about the space is that like sellers have like so many different ways to like make it work for them. And by make it work, I mean to build a store around like the personal vision that they have. Because you mentioned a couple things that like stand out, like the $50 PSA 10 ARs, IRs. My friend Sandin, who I've been with, that's kind of like his like specialty, and it appeals to a lot of families, casual collectors, where like it's very presentable. It's a 10. It's a card that I really like. The artwork's cute. It's a good gift. Those cards are great for Christmas. So like stock up for eBay for
Dude,
holidays.
also the
those are
amount of
amazing
like
gifts.
young couples at these
Yes.
shows is astonishing. Like it'll be like a teenage, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, and she collects the cutesy one and he wants it. And it's like amazing how well when those two types of customers are paired together, or even friends or family, like you said, like you can really knock off like 3 or 4 sales in a single go sometimes, which is like really nice.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's that amount is so easy to digest for people. I think I've written about this at length too, is that like for people at card shows, 0 up until I want to say the upper bound is like maybe, and this is arbitrary, it's like 300 is where people don't think too much about the purchase. It's like, do I have the money for this? Do I like it? I can get it now. This makes sense. I'll
do
ask for like
you
$20 off, and
do
everyone's
you
happy.
sorry, I keep cutting you off. When you said you're writing about this, do you write about this in your Substack?
Yeah, one of the articles, it's called the
I'm
writing's
gonna
kind of
paste
fun
it
by
in the
the
chat.
wayside. It's called like 6 types of buyers at card shows.
So if anyone in the chat wants to check this out, Jason has this linked in his Instagram bio. I wasn't logged into Substack, and so I haven't actually delved into it, but that does sound interesting, and I would highly recommend anyone who wants to hear more about that check it out, because that's. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that article? I guess.
Yeah, so I started the Substack because I wanted to be like really deliberate in how I communicated certain ideas and approaches to selling. The writing's kind of gone by the wayside. It's like due to time and just commitments to like the schedule. But the TLDR of that article was like the 6 types of buyers that I generally see at every card show in varying amounts. And just to kind of rail off the top of my head, like it's families with their kids. It's like the kid doing the trade up challenge, and
Right.
the kid that wants a slab, and like dad's like, okay, shut up, like I'll buy it for you. The really really casual like binder collector, like they're looking to trade singles out or fill their binder with the singles. The general kind of casual collector who has maybe a little bit of a higher budget, and that's kind of like what I'm talking about with that sweet spot of like 0 to 3 to 400. Then there's like the collector, the actual like hobby collector who like knows what they're super plugged in. They might be sitting on this live stream. Might be friends of mine. Know what they're looking for. They're building a very very specific collection. And then after that, it's like vendors and streamers, like B2B people who are looking to like build their own inventory. People who are speccing. That's probably a big one, or people who are buying for stream. So
I like that. No, I think that's like a really like interesting take. That's kind of refreshing because you don't. I feel like you don't. Definitely, I don't see it on YouTube. People breaking it down that granularly. Granted, it probably wouldn't get as many views because people would be like, "What is this guy talking about?" But it's good to like know your audience in that way, where, like you said, that sort of sweet spot. Even that person you described, I could visually remember people that were like that at my table, where that person who can go that full 0 to 300, they might like, you'll see them at multiple shows. They'll buy the $300 card from you one show, and then maybe the next show they'll be like, I spent too much, but I like you and I'll still give you, $20 for this single or whatever. So it's good to have that sort of understanding of that what it really comes down to is like, what are people buying? If someone's constantly asking you, do you have any illustration rares, and you don't, maybe you need to get some exposure to that. Like, you
yeah,
need to key into that a little bit more. I see too often that, and again, I don't do it enough, but at these shows where people will just like, you can tell kind of like, I don't want to call anyone out, but you can tell kind of like the more like scalper vendor table, because they'll just be sitting there on their phone with like just, retail ETBs, blisters, whatever behind them. And I'm just like, dude, if you're really in the business of like trying to sell this stuff, you should be like kind of engaged and like curious about what these people are actually after. But
yeah, it's pretty easy to tell at shows like which vendors like just like picked up Blooming Waters from someone on Facebook Marketplace versus, where am I even going with this? Like versus somebody who is either like a true tried and true collector, like either it's their personal collection or something that's just really specific to like what they're trying to do. And maybe to expand on this a little bit further is like me and my friends from the Bay Area, like the group that I like travel with to LA for the shows, or we all set up in the same place locally at our local card show. We all sell like something different.
right.
And I think that's something that we take some pride in. Like I do a lot of the very specific Japanese. Another one does some like really high-end sealed and high-end English. Another one does like really high-end Japanese. Another does like PSA 10 popular Japanese ARs and sequential sets. Another one does English vintage. Like he is like a Facebook Marketplace like demon when it comes to like sourcing that stuff.
People who just
So
found their garage collection, they're
yes,
like, what is this worth? And he's like, I will drive to meet you right now.
yes, he'll send us like a picture of like what he picked up, and I'm like, respect to you. I could not do
Yeah,
that.
that's cool. And there's something to be said about that too, because like I, again, very limited compared to you guys probably in terms of shows, but I enjoy it's if you're vending by yourself, it is very beneficial to vend next to your friends if you can orient yourselves that way. Once you can go to the bathroom, get food, that sort of thing. That's like literally that will be the bane of your existence at those shows if you can't get up or trust someone to watch your table. But the other thing is, like you said, if everyone sort of has a different niche, what ends up happening is if you're all in the same area or even, across the way, you can say, well, I don't have that item, but Jason over here, I know
Exactly.
he has that. And so it's sort of this positive feedback loop where everyone's helping everyone. You could kind of keep it probably pretty localized in terms of like just getting all those sales out. But let's see. Connor with another question. How should I diversify my con sellings between the low end all the way to the high end. I don't really know the average customer that comes to a con. If you haven't done it before, I would probably suggest just taking like what you have that you're willing to sell and just see how it goes. You probably need to just get used to like the actual transactional feedback as well, as opposed to being worried. This is kind of like, trying to think things out too much or try to be too perfect without like just throwing yourself out there. If I had to say, probably just stick to lower to medium end and see how that does, or maybe have like one higher end thing and sort of don't buy a bunch of high end and then not have experience like transacting in that way and then realize that you need to sell things at a loss or anything like that. But I don't know if you have more suggestions, Jason.
Yeah, go to a local show first. That like lowers the stakes. Your
Yep.
costs will be cheaper. Like the ones that are like in the mall where the table's like $100. And then you can probably rent a case, track one down. You can buy a bulletin board on Amazon and then return it after you're done. Like that's a way to like de-risk like your cost as for like a first time show. Like Zach said, just bring whatever you have. Like no need to like buy stuff. Again, we're talking about like de-risking your day there. So just bring whatever you have, price it out, see how it does. Just like get used to the transaction, as he said. And then next, you'll want to see like what sold and then what didn't sell and why. I'll use myself an example. My very first card show was Denver Collecticon at the end of 2023. And one key takeaway I had from that show was on Saturday, I had mostly, I think, slabs, graded cards set up in the displays. And it was kind of slow that first day. But then the second day, I used the empty space to put in like my raw cards that I'd priced out that night and decided to see what would be like putting out like good. I mean, good as in like, again, my niche, like Japanese promos, Japanese exclusive full arts that weren't like, gem mint. They're probably like LP plus, near mint minus, good presentability at lower prices in the display, as opposed to having like a bunch of expensive graded cards. And those moved really, really fast. And it's that kind of just like pivot that you can do mid-weekend if it's a 2-day show to see like what's working for you. So I would say like it's your first time, try it. Don't be too hard on yourself. There are ways to de-risk it, as mentioned. And your takeaway is your goal isn't to like maximize sales, it's just to learn.
Yeah, I would agree. He said not the buying and returning after for the case. That's pretty funny. Okay. I don't think we'll be able to touch everything I laid out just because the conversation is sort of flowing, but that is perfectly fine. I want to get your take on actually, one last thing, because I do think this would be important. We sort of talked about lessons a little bit already, but I wrote this down where if you had the opportunity to start over today with knowing what you know now, what would you do? Would you change anything, or what would you do differently? Sort of starting from ground zero, like I guess just name like 3 things or something where it's like, these are, if I wanted to carry these forward, these are like really would help me scale at a pace that would be like doable.
First thing that comes to mind is I would want to have a goal, like a clear goal and game plan for anything that I'm sourcing. To expand on that a little bit, right now, for things that I source like in basically from Japan, whether I'm buying it online or in person, I generally know what I'm going to do with it. Like it's either going in a display or it's going to sit, I'm going to scan it and upload to eBay and it sits on eBay and I'm prepared to sit on that item, or it's going in a grading backlog and being sent to PSA for grading. I think when I think about like early on in like the kind of card career, like I feel like I bought things without a game plan for them. An example, actually funny enough, are the two cards in the thumbnail, the very, very expensive creatures Charizard and the illustration Zora. Like, uh, I bought those at auction and didn't really do anything with it after. I think one harsh learning I learned in kind of like a high end space is that you have to be either prepared to sit on it for a long time and like shove it away, or like quick flip it and take advantage of the market. And I didn't really do either. So now I've just they're kind of in no man's land for me. Like their current like comps are lower than what I paid. So in a way, it's kind of money that's locked up for, it's a lot of money too, for no good
Right.
reason. So kind of tie that back to the beginning. Like because I locked up that money, that's money I couldn't use elsewhere. So before you like make like really like big plays, like stop and think about like what could I do with this money instead? And that's something I try to like stress to like my peers too, and that like with how crazy the market is, you don't have to keep up. Like having cash ready on hand, like is so important. And I'm in a position like now where that's the case, but I would say that like back then, those were pretty significant plays that I could have put elsewhere, knowing what I know now, and done so much better. Like that were like less sexy, like
Right.
buying more Nagabas or buying more Detective Pikachus. And even back then, those cards weren't at the prices they were now, but back then the prices after like grading in PSA 10 still made sense. The math was still mathing at lower prices.
Yeah, it's sometimes like definitely depending on the context of the market too. Sometimes people will just buy things because they think it's a good price or whatever without, like you said, thinking through what is my actual plan for this. If it's a good price, is my plan to flip it, or do I have a buyer, or is it a good price and I'm willing to sit on it for an extended period of time? Because like you said, when you tie up that capital, especially those higher end cards, the thing I struggle with is that it's just a simple like mathematics equation where it's like the likelihood that this doubles before, if I put the same amount of capital into like other promos or singles or whatever, it's like it feels a lot less likely. But with that being said, a 50% move on a $10,000 card is a much larger jump. So I don't know. I could see it going both ways, but yeah, it kind of depends on how much capital you have and what your goals are. Because I would think that most people have less capital than they tend to flex or act like they have. One of the things that I've been seeing that's kind of like I've mentioned this on past streams, but it's a little bit of a toppy signal for me to like probably sell off some things, even though a lot of it is like tucked away for years, is how many people are now showing off their collector app on like Facebook and stuff, and everyone and their mother has $100,000 plus collection at this
Yes.
point. My problem there is that they're saying that, but no one's selling anything. No one's taking profits in those scenarios. And so when the market does have an eventual downturn, that collector app might go down to 70,000. It might go down to 60,000. And then you're going to wish that you had at least sold some of it. And so that's kind of where I'm at, where I'm like, I've been in the scenario where, you know, you hold things till they hit the tippy top. But if you don't sell anything, once it starts to come back down, it almost feels worse than if you took a little bit of profit. It's like, okay, I could have made, because it could go one of two ways. It could keep going up or it's going to go down. And when it keeps going up, obviously you're happy in that scenario. But I don't know. I watched a video from Earn recently, who was on the streams before, and he had some good points about like everyone's just like flexing numbers, but no one's actually showing how much they've made or what they're putting that money towards, which I think is a very valid point. So
Yeah. And a lot of good points there, and a lot of very relatable points that I've seen myself in my own experience. You want to sell on the way up.
yeah,
uh, and I completely agree with you. Like a lot of like regular casual collectors do not realize how much like their collection is worth. And like before they know it, like the market could turn. And I hate using the market because it's like very it's very vague and generalized. It's like this big behemoth that doesn't apply to exactly everything. But like if prices generally start to come down, like you said, the portfolio value of their collector will go down, and then it's not going to feel great.
Well, if
In
they're, I mean, if their plan is to sit on it for 5, 10 years or whatever, then they have nothing to worry about. But I guess my point there was that like people will flex it, and then when it comes down, then they have the regret of like not letting some of it go. And it's like, well, again, to your point, you probably should have like established some very common goals. For me at this point, it's like I have a lot of duplicates of booster boxes or cases or things where I'm like, I probably should trim the top of these off so that I dollar cost average down, but also like I'm not upset if they go, they're double now, but if they go back to being only up 25 or 50%, I'm gonna be like, all right, well, I gotta wait till they get back to being double now, which could take 5 years, could take 7 years. You never know. So
they need to own it, and
yeah.
that's something I went through in 2023 with the full art trainers and the Japanese boom. Fortunately, most of the stuff, the big stuff that I sold. I didn't sell it at the top. I sold it on the way up. Um, Basically, I had the extra Battle Day cards in PSA 10, and I sold those. And a lot of other cards that peaked during that time. Like I had a Skyla Plasma Gale. Somebody bought it at buy it now on eBay for 6K. I don't know where it is now. The Lily Clefairy box.
Oh my
In
god.
PSA 10. No, it was a CGC 9.5. I graded that myself like the year prior, and kind of just I was just lazy and didn't list it. But when I saw like what it was doing, I did list it. I listed it at 2K. And then a Japanese person, there was a lot of Japanese people like reverse importing the stuff back to Japan to sell at like buy lists back to shops. Somebody bought it for 2K on my store, and they canceled it. They're like, "Can I change my payment method?" And I was like naive. I was like, "Sure, I'll list it higher so nobody else buys it." So I listed it for 3K, and then somebody else bought it and paid for it.
Wow.
Um, and then on the flip side, uh, I had a CGC 9.5 Alola Friends that I bought for like 2.5K, and it went all the way up at auction at like 15K. But because my copy was in the vault, I didn't want to take it out and pay 3%. So I took it. I still have it.
Yeah,
That's
those were
all
crazy. I remember contemplating buying like that box at one point with the master
the
battle.
Master Battle set.
Oh my god, that thing was like 15 grand or like 10 grand at the time. It was nuts. I think it's like 3 or 4 grand maybe now. I don't know.
Yeah, I also had a Erica's Hospitality, the Tag All Stars. Somebody I had it like during the boom. I had it listed at like 4.5K, and somebody offered 4. I said no, and then need to hold on to it until this year and sold it for like 11. So, like, if you're gonna hold on to stuff stubbornly, like, be prepared to own it. And I learned the hard way. So,
Yeah.
like, moral of the story is like, if something like, especially in today's climate where like prices are like jumping, like Red's Pikachu comes to mind, the PSA 10. Like, if it is just like way more than what you personally value it at, it's probably time to sell.
Yep. I agree. Yeah, that card's like almost $600 now, I think, which is crazy.
It's never since COVID, it was never above 300. And
Yeah.
in a month, like it's like that says all you need to know.
It's happening with a lot of those Japanese exclusive Pikachus. This is a really good question actually from Quilly, which I'm curious about now. He has not answered this. Do you grade? I guess with PSA, I'm thinking he means in Japan or in the U.S. or both, or because they have a PSA facility in Japan now, right?
They do. They have an entire like PSA office. Yeah, I don't grade in Japan. I send it to Santa Ana like everyone else. And I wait until it comes back.
Very straightforward. I like this. Always sell a little bit. Every time we're at a peak like this, I need to start taking my own advice and doing that as well. The problem with me is like I'm not, and this is something where again I've sort of made videos or comments very naively, like about, oh, you can invest in Pokemon and all this stuff, but thinking that like people are doing the same thing I am, which is like I have no debt and this sort of stuff, so I'm able to like sit on things for a longer period of time and not feel as squeezed for cash or anything. But with this being said, like, yeah, I think as soon as you start thinking that everything's going to go up forever, it's probably also a time to sell at least a little bit. So that's good. Shug Nasty said, why not? Why don't you grade with PSA in Japan? You have to pay more for in person, I'm guessing, or
as far as I know, I think it is a little more expensive, like after conversion. Like I think one card is 3,000 yen. That's like 21 USD. And I'm also not there enough to like actually take, like, if they finish it and send it to my apartment, no one's gonna be there to, yeah, it's just like a logistical headache. And for quite frankly, for me, like I am not in a rush to get anything back from PSA either. Like right now as a business is structured, like I have my PSA backlog of like cards to send. Some a lot of it will probably never get sent. It'll probably just sit in a box and whatever happens. Like it's like over 2,000 cards.
Jesus. Would you not list some of those on eBay though, or anything? Like, is there not a world in which you don't send them all to PSA, or is it just like you're saying, one of those things where you'll get around to it? Or I guess how do you balance that with like future sourcing, where you're like, oh, this would be good to send to PSA, and you're like, oh shit, I have 2,000 cards.
I'll give you an example. This stack, it'll go to PSA when it goes to PSA. It's the Nagaba Umbreon. So like that was a big like I put my money where my mouth was last year, like buying those sets. Like I really believed in it. Like in terms of collectability, raw collectability, graded collectability. And this was back when like the PSA 10 premium, like if you graded a whole set, you're only like, and then selling it on eBay after fees, you're only making like $100. To where it is now, like just like the price paid, like at $19, it'll go, like I'll send it when I send it. Like the current prices are just insane.
Right.
Versus like this is probably more recent. Like I'm gonna send these a little bit higher and they'll come back sooner. So like I have like Japanese gold stars, Screams, raw Psyduck.
Oh my god.
Some Masakis. So it's like I basically like separate the stuff that like I consider like premium for my store, and it doesn't even have to like come back immediately and be sold immediately, but like those are just cards that I value more that I could use on my store rather than like Nagabas.
How do you keep track of everything in terms of like, is it just like a spot check of the store and what you're going to bring to a show, where you're like, I'm lacking on the premiums, for example, those higher end cards, like I need to clearly re-up on those or send off to, how do you gauge like, because for me, I've tried the spreadsheet method for tracking inventory, and it just like at a certain point, even when you're only in the few thousands of dollars of spend or inventory, it gets out of hand. As soon as you pass like 200-300 cards, it's like, okay, I'm not going to be able to keep track of this. It just got to the point where I was like, I would literally just lay out the case, the display case in this case for shows on the floor before people had the risers and stuff. And I'm like, how many cards can I fit in this case? Okay, I can fit 53 cards to like present them how I want them. Now I have to choose, all right, well, I pretty much choose a price threshold where it's like $35 and up are going in the case, everything else is going in the binder, and then I'll have one more case for slabs. But this is a long-winded question. Just how do you gauge when it's time to re-up, both in terms of just the store and what you're bringing to shows, and do you ever reach a point where you're like, okay, I can chill for a little bit, or is it kind of always it's still like keep pushing? I just need to sell more to like get more to a sustainable level.
Yeah, and that's probably something I would say, like, advice for people. If I could go back to the beginning, I would have set up like an entire system before scaling. Now it's like you scale, you have some bandages, you scale more, you bandage it again. But now I'm in a better place with like tracking where like I don't know if you've heard of Airtable. It's basically a spreadsheet on steroids. So I basically pay for that membership and I use it to track basically all I now have like what I call a legacy inventory, which is stuff that I've had from before like this implementation, and then like Airtable inventory, which is when I implemented Airtable. And I basically built out this spreadsheet like using their features that would allow me to track receipts, create card IDs specific to the exact card that I bought on that receipt, and then tracking where that card's going like in my ecosystem. So whether I'm bringing it to a show or sending it in for grading, like every single card on this Airtable sheet has its own unique ID that I know like where to trace it back to. And you don't have to use a tool like Airtable to do so. It's just like it just has more functionality built into it that you can use out of the box. Like uh some people have like built out entire spreadsheets to like track all of that and using like Excel macros and stuff. And that's obviously a lot of work,
Yeah, so I
but
just looked it up. So
that's what you have to do.
Airtable, it looks like I'd never heard of it, but it's an AI. Essentially,
Yeah,
it's
it has
more like
AI
flexible in the
features.
sense where like if you could bake in a scenario where you're like generate a unique ID for these or like sort these based on name, that sort of thing. That's cool because
Exactly.
something I've been thinking about that I wanted to bring up with retro last stream was on the topic of AI because I feel like no one talks about it within the Pokemon hobby, and I feel like there's ways to really streamline a lot of people's businesses and even content while still being pretty unique. But a lot of people don't seem to be utilizing it, so I will have to check that out because I'm curious now. Part of the reason why I sold off a lot of my stuff was because I wanted to take a break from like all the tracking and stuff, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna sell a lot, put it into sealed, and just sit on it, and then when I'm ready to re-enter back in, I'll give it another go. But it was definitely getting to the point where I couldn't. To your point, like creating an ID or something is a good process, or numbering them on the back of the sleeve or something to where you might have like 5 of the same card in different conditions, and you just need like an easy way to be able to pull them and track them and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Like for like this box is essentially my one of the graded card backlogs, and on each card I basically use the price gun to put the number, and then
Mm-hmm.
on my Airtable sheet all I do is just like search a number and I can find the exact receipt that I bought it from, how much I paid, when I bought it. If I'm selling the card raw, like it'll be in my display and the number will be on the back. So when somebody makes an offer, I can see how much I paid and what my net would be to see if I can make it work.
So you have that, you can pull Airtable up on your phone
Yeah,
and cross
they have an app.
reference. Nice, that's cool. Yeah, I've found I am a Google Docs, Google Sheets warlord at this point, just because I feel like it's more flexible than um, like autosave
Yeah,
Microsoft. But the one drawback is it is not mobile friendly whatsoever. Like I'm someone who has to write things down like throughout the day. And so like when I have like an idea pop in my head or something, I usually use the Notes app, but sometimes I'll use Google Docs, and I'm just like I'm writing it without even knowing what is being written because it goes off the page or whatever. And I'm like, dude, this is trash for how
I
how
used to
how
write
high
my
this
sales by hand.
really on like
Yeah, every
a
single one.
logbook or something.
I have the notepads, and they literally it's the card and how much I sold it for, and that's it.
Hey, humble beginnings.
Right?
Um, okay, let's see. Jason's a juicer. This is obviously a joke. No, we are not financial advisors. I started including that in the description of all my videos because I'm like, I feel like there could be some risk down the road with how often people are saying, including myself, just buy this now, sell this now. It's like, oh, there's probably some real repercussions to that. But another thing that I saw you wanted us to talk about, which I don't know if we've touched on it, but we haven't really fully covered it, was you said selling in person versus online. I guess if you want to provide more context onto what exactly you meant by that.
Yeah, this is something I've been meaning to write about for a really long time. But like I think of and this is for people who want to like make selling work sustainably for them long term. Like I think the cards show space is really, really taken off. Like there's a lot of new card shows, a lot of new vendors. And one thing I kind of notice is that like, and I'm included in this too because I work a ton of card shows, but like there are most people who vend at shows, they that's the only place they sell at. Or at least that's what it seems like to me. They only sell at shows. Um Most people I talk to at shows, like when I mention eBay, they go, "Oh, I don't want to deal with the fees."
13%. No.
What the fees? And I don't tell them this, but like my genuine opinion is that like if you can't eat the fees, maybe you shouldn't sell it or buy it. Maybe you're buying it too high. I don't know.
Yeah,
Like if it
if
only
you
works
can't
at a show, yeah.
yeah, if you can't handle the fees, then you're probably not insulated enough in terms of like, which I understand, maybe they're just starting out or whatever, but once you again roll your inventory over enough times, you're in on some of these cards for like 20-30% of their current market value. If you're selling it at 100% and it gets chopped by it really becomes a game. And again, I didn't do this to the extent that I wanted to just because it became overwhelming, but it does seem like it becomes a game of like how fast can you turn things over, and it's less about how much you made and more about like if you made profit on that and just keep like moving it, but a lot of people don't realize that, and so they'll sit on a card and keep adjusting the price and it'll never sell, and it's like, dude, that's
And
part of
then
why.
and then you post on eBay and it sells in the next week. That's like an extreme example, but what I want to get at with utilizing both channels, it doesn't have to be eBay either. Like there are some people who vend that also do like Whatnot and it works for them. Like they do like the claim sale feature.
Mhm.
I don't have Whatnot and I never will,
Yeah.
but that's like one way it works for them. And I think Whatnot also charges like 10-12% fees. It's just another way where like they're fundamentally different selling channels. Like selling at a card show is active. Like everyone there is ready to buy. You have people walking by your table. There's a lot of RNG, of course. But you also only have limited table space. Like we were talking about earlier. You have to decide on certain things to bring and certain things to
Right.
like leave on the bench. Like you got your starters and your backups, and then everybody else has to stay behind. But then on eBay, you can
Everyone's out.
yes, everybody's playing. We got the whole squad out, and that's passive selling. Like you've done the work to list things, and then from there you can adjust the prices as needed. You can even use promoted listings to give like certain things more visibility, and certain items could also like work for both in-person shows and eBay. Another example is let's see. Is it in here? No. Like
Pulling from the mounds of cards.
I'm not gonna bring 20 copies of this to a show, but I'll list 20 copies of this on eBay and it'll sell. I could bring 3 copies to a show, but like the power of like multi-quantity listings on eBay, that only like, and if you have that across multiple cards, that'll bring you more traffic naturally for other listings. When the items in stock, I don't have any right now, but I have more coming back from PSA. But PSA 10 Nagaba Pikachu, when it's in stock on my store, like I'm the first listing on eBay because like I've sold like 198 copies or whatever. So like becoming like a power seller allows you to build that momentum to drive more traffic to your store, and you'll have items that basically you're the one selling it unless somebody's like severely undercut you in price. And then it'll also allow like, especially in the market that we're in now, like throughout June, like I had so many bricks sell. Like bricks is in stuff that I listed before I got a scanner.
Yeah.
That's like 4 years old. I'm like, I don't update the prices on my eBay either. Like I'll like get an email. I'm like, do I still have this card? Or like it'll be a card that I tried to bring to a show and the sticker price is half of what it was on eBay. It didn't sell at a show, but then sold on eBay. So
Yeah.
being able to like pair the two together is a great way to de-risk your business and not have to rely on like winning the Super Bowl every Sunday.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, that's the thing. You can't expect to have such a diverse inventory and expect to get top dollar on every single little thing, and also keep things moving. And like, there's too much competition for that, one, but two, it's just that doesn't make sense. One thing I'd add too is that, again, to go back to the fee thing, my limited experience on eBay, I did it for a few weeks. I think I did like 8 or 10K in sales in the 30-day or 90-day period or whatever. And this was just from overflow of slabs I had from shows. But the point was, a lot of those sales that I was able to get, again, market conditions kind of fluctuating in between, but that 13%, my thought was, okay, anything that doesn't sell at these shows where I could get the top dollar for or within 90 to 100%, I literally put in Google Sheets the price I wanted. I added, or at least the bottom line price, like the final sale price. I added 13.25% to that, and I added $5 shipping to it. And then I listed it on eBay for that price with free shipping. So essentially, I sort of put, and it depends too. Like if there's million or thousands of these cards listed, it could be hard to do that. But I guess my point is there is tons of items on eBay that sell for 13% higher than they do in person. What ends up happening is that ends up being the exact same sale price that you want. A lot of people think it's just, $100 card. Oh, I don't want to sell it on eBay because I'm only going to get $87. I've had plenty of $100 cards in that scenario that I listed for $115 on eBay and they sold. And it could be a multitude of reasons. It could be because you end up being the lowest list, someone buys them out, someone chunks it, whatever it is. But I had a really like, it felt like a turning point in my mind where I was like, this might be like the additional like revenue stream that's needed to like keep this going to where you can actually keep redeploying capital on a regular basis rather than just really banking on these shows. Cause I feel like it would eventually get kind of toxic to just have like, you're going to these shows and you're like, I really need to sell these cards to like be able to buy more cards. And so I do think people underutilize eBay and probably other platforms too. And to your point, they're kind of all in the same 10 to 13% range. And you're getting offers on Facebook and all this stuff to where the difference of a couple percentage points, in my opinion, is worth the amount of visibility and tracking that they let you have. Like you can buy the shipping label there. They'll track all your taxes and all that stuff for you. Like it's so streamlined. They give you so many thousands of eyeballs on there when you could just go out and, get dinner with your friends or whatever. It's just so underappreciated, but I don't know. It's kind of blows my mind.
Those are all really great points. That's like the uh, bold font, capital letters, like that whole spiel right there. That was.
I think people just have to try it. A lot of these people that feel that way have not tried it or have not tried it more than a week to where they've like tested out different things. Cause I even at one point, well, I won't get into it too much, but essentially at one point I found like I liked watching Catch 'em All Collectible Dan's videos, and he had old videos about like how he would try to price his listings or become like because he was like the top list for like the Celebrations Charizard or something like that.
That was a big I've seen that video too.
Yeah, he had a really good explanation there, and I was like, okay, now there's like, it was even down to like the keyword search, like how would you search for this card on eBay? Like all these little granular things that I don't think most people think about to get like just a little bit of an edge.
Or they
The
just don't want to run a real business.
Yeah,
They just want to sell at a show and get cash and use the cash. A couple of reactions too is that where do I even start? There's just like so much good stuff to unpack there. Is that like the the return that you get from selling it in person versus like eating, maybe we'll even say that like you ate a little bit more in fees on eBay when it's like the shipping label or your ad fee standard.
yeah.
Like I sat my ass at home and got to sell this and ship it out and go back to what I was doing. And you had to spend your whole weekend sitting there eating chicken tenders and fries during the weekend, waiting for the sale to maybe come. And then they alt your card and then you just accepted 90% of the comp.
There could literally be a sale while you're there that
Yes.
devalues your card, and like you're saying, like they are not mentioning that they paid $100 to $200 for the table. They're not
Yes.
mentioning that
Exactly.
any sort of travel or hotel, any of that sort of stuff, even if it's local, like there, how much is your time worth to you is really like another thing. If you're there for 8 hours, like again, you don't need to break it down on, oh, I only made $10 an hour. But I guess my point is, you could have been sitting at home, you could have gone out. So it's just nice to have the options. Like I think a lot of people just really get stuck in the just purely the dollars. Like they just think about the cash, which obviously you do want to keep the sales moving and whatever, but the actual price difference, I'm sure if you really ran it on like a large scale of hundreds and thousands of sales, it's probably not as big of a percentage difference as people think. Always Collect says he needs the slowdown course. Go subscribe to the Substack and follow him on Instagram.
Substack that doesn't get updated.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
go read what's already out there. This will motivate you to write more.
Yeah.
Shows are a good way to source for online sales. Shows are a really good place. The problem is that like at this point, there's so many. Well, there's still gems you can find, but it is hard to find gradable copies of things now because sort of I feel like the baseline vendor has like leveled up since I tried it, for a few months about a year and a half ago. Where like you could still find like tag team alt arts and stuff that were in pretty good condition, because people were just selling them for the near mint raw price. But now most things have been combed through in that way, but there's still opportunities.
I'd say it's optimized already. Like it's not impossible. It's definitely possible. Like I bought a few things over the weekend. You have some things that come to your table too, but a lot of it's
That
like a lot of it's out of your control too.
the best value I found was like people, like to your point, bringing me stuff, or you're trading in at a certain percentage or whatever. You just end up getting so much value sometimes where like the best thing ever is when it's like a card that you struggled to move or to sell, and then someone's like, would you trade for this
Yeah.
at 80%? And they give you like a lot of liquid lower end singles. The most common ones I would take in that I loved getting were the Charizard UPC promos, the V Star, the V Max, the V. I mean, these cards just sell like hotcakes, and also it's like so many people would have them. Where it's like if I had $100 card and they'd had those, again, the math comes out a little bit differently, but in essence, like it can help you offload and get potentially more liquid cards. But yeah, promos going absolutely bonkers right now. I think someone mentioned, always mentioned up here the armored Mewtwo and that Hoopa. I've never been a fan of that Hoopa, but that thing is absolutely skyrocketed.
I like it, but not I've always liked
It's
it
like
as like a
2,500 or something now. It's crazy.
and it's not a $2,500 card. It's absolutely
Wasn't it?
not.
It was like a $300 card or something, like not even a
It's
year or two ago.
at like if you're to find it in medium play, heavy play condition at a card shop in Japan, it's $5 all day. And that's what I would pick up because like on eBay, they would move at uh like between 15 and 20, and then I just use a standard envelope and ship it out. And that's kind of another thing with eBay. It's like You can move like the non card show liquid stuff, like the smaller stuff, and it won't cost you that much money, like under $20. Like
Yeah, they give
those
you
materials that
the
you source, like
and you can get tracking on it. You
yeah.
can get a tracked stamp, which is like literally the nicest thing ever. But Korean Ditto up to 115 already. I know nothing about those cards. I've seen them, but what did they come out at, like 40 or 50 bucks, I think?
Yeah, you had to do a bunch of things at the mall to get them, and that's kind of the rationale around, like, it wasn't really a, "Here you go,
Attainable.
give it away." You gotta do a bunch of things just to get it. Now, granted, people still figured out how to source a bunch of copies and sell them on the secondhand market. Um, but yeah, they started out at, like, 30 to 40, and that was, like, the time to buy it. And then from there, I think the last I saw was like 80. Like I had bought a bunch at like 40, but then my order got canceled. So like either the seller saw the price was going up and they canceled, whatever. A lot of them are starting to come back from PSA too. So we'll see what happens with the pricing. So I think just patience, like patience is a virtue here. Like we'll see what happens with the price, but generally, like for new releases, we're seeing what we see in the past with other cards. They start at a certain price, it gets a certain amount of demand, it goes up a certain amount. Copies start to come back from PSA, price starts to come back down because the market can't really absorb like all those PSA 10s.
Yeah.
And we'll see it settle somewhere. Life moves on. People kind of forget about it. And
Yeah,
we'll see.
I would tell people to be very careful with new releases of these amazing promos, but while PSA is like consistently backlogged right now, as opposed to, a year ago where you could send in a bulk sub and get it back within like 30 days. So just be careful of that because, like you're saying, there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of those, and that'll start to chop away at the raw price too, probably. But okay, I see Quilly's question, and Quilly, I know I missed your question earlier or your comment. We did mention. Well, I don't know if we didn't go through a tour. Let's do that at the end if you want to show off some stuff, maybe. I know I've had you for hour 45. We'll try to wrap in the next like 20, 30 minutes, if that's okay.
Don't worry about it. I'm good until 9:30.
Okay, but I gotta go eat dinner too, so we'll figure that out. But he asked some good questions here. I think we sort of touched on this too, but how do you select which inventory you bring to which shows? Actually, I guess this is a new one. Collecticons, local shows. I've noticed you don't really do binders. Is that the case? Why or why not? Yeah, do you want to take that?
Yeah, this answer will not be very impressive at all, but I think one of the positives of having a very specific curation and taste for displays at shows is that like once you have stuff priced out, you really just have to update prices for like unsold stuff and then work in the new stuff that you bought for the show. And for me, it's going to be like restocks of vintage LP near mint minus Japanese promos that are like fairly priced for like binders, personal collections, but the PSA 10 alternatives are insane. And usually you can like start at one place with like a Masaki Gengar or like a Masaki Alakazam for me in my case. And then the natural decision is, oh, I should just get Golem and Machamp. Not Almastar because it doesn't sell at all. But the big four are good starting places for me. And then from there, it's just like restocking what already sold and then just bringing whatever didn't sell to the next show. Now, the kind of downside for like where I need to be better is I don't do binders at all. I probably never will because I just don't have the bandwidth for it to work through and to price things out. I barely have enough time to price things out as is. And then also with like the travel schedule, I will fly back into the country and work a card show in the next day. So depending on how I'm feeling, I can just bring whatever I have that's already priced out that didn't sell and bring it to the next show and work in the new stuff, or bring whatever I have. Because sometimes like I've done I've gone back into the country, done a layover, and gone to CollectCon the next day. So there's no time. I'm just like swapping
That's
my bags
nuts.
and I'm out the door. Like I'll go through my boxes of cards and just like flip through stuff and be like, okay, there's a Pikachu promo. It's a PSA 10. Okay, that's good for a show.
You're like,
And
I
then,
gotta fill the case up.
exactly, the stuff like that. And then you're like, I'm doing it at the last second. It's like, okay, can I bring more
But the
Nagmar?
good
Sure.
thing there is that you have like a well-established enough inventory that you kind of know, hey,
Exactly.
I'll grab some of these here. I'll grab some of these here. They're gonna, some more liquid ones here. Maybe some things I need to like try to offload. Like it's sophisticated enough that you know what you have. Sort of. Maybe you don't know exactly what's gonna go where, but like you have a good idea of like
Yeah.
value wise. Like I need a couple high end cards, that sort of thing.
A lot of
Um,
it's on feel. So
yeah,
like
that's
you
fair.
work X amount of shows, you get a sense for like what will catch people's eye. And like this, nobody's looking for this at a show. PSA 6 Blastoise base set hollow.
I don't know. Some people, I mean, those big three, I take on most Charizards in like any grade, in those lower grades, those 5, 6s still, because I always get like a dad or something who's like, what? They still have the Charizard? And he's like, okay, how much is that? And it's like 300. And he'll be like, all right, this is an early birthday gift.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
As someone, I will just say, Quilly, as someone who has done binders at many shows, Jason has a very valid point, which is it is one of the most labor intensive ways to put out inventory. It has trade-offs. The pro of it is that people love to flip through it, and it usually gets you tens, hundreds of dollars in sales, which is great. But the downside is I'm starting to get to a point where the downside outweighs the upside, which is like
Takes
Jason
up table
saying,
space too.
takes up table space. People will put it all over the fucking place. They'll put it on your cases that like you really have to have the eyes be or the displays be visible at all times, and there just isn't enough space to have a display for singles, a display for slabs, and then binders. It always is in an awkward spot. And then the other thing too is, like Jason said, repricing stuff in the binders or reorganizing. I'm really kind of OCD where like once I finish a show, I want to like push. I want there to be no gaps in the binder. Like I want it to be full, every page filled, or at least filled until the back of it. And taking those cards out and putting them back in, and I like to organize by price. It's just a nightmare. I'll have the TCG list next to me. I'll see what's changed. Like it is too much work for the amount of money made or trade-ins there, but it is, you can fit a lot of cards in there, so there's that, as opposed to just in cases. But yeah, I've definitely been needing to think about that more too in the future if I do more shows. All right, Quilly is bombing us with questions. Holy hell. Let's see. If you could dream up some analytics related to your business, what kind of metrics would be the most actionable? What data do you either have or not have when analyzed would be the most useful to you? I'm guessing he's asking that to you, and maybe from the eBay store perspective. Like, are there metrics for your listings that are helpful to you for just in general besides just sales?
Yeah, the this is definitely something I'd have to like stew on. The first one that comes to mind, I don't know if I've found it anywhere on eBay going through my data, but like how long something takes to sell. Like,
The only way I've seen that, again, for very limited listings, is it'll remind me that like it'll be like, because I won't promote some of them, and it'll be like, do you want this to sell? Like it's been on here for
yeah.
45 days now or whatever. But yeah, maybe there's a better way in eBay. Do you ever utilize auctions? Why or why not? Do you ever consign cards? Why or when and why or why not?
I have not run an auction on eBay since 2023. Like on my eBay dashboard, all of 2024, the auction was a big fat 0. And I think now actually, considering running one just because of like I have like a lot of this really old inventory that's just been sitting, and like a lot of times like we think that, oh, I don't want an auction to go low, but if it's a card I'm never going to own again, why do I care? Like, so that's one, I'm considering it.
Also,
Going
it gives you a buyer in theory.
exactly.
Like,
The flip side also is when I did run auctions in 2023, like you would have non-paying buyer, like the shenanigans are like like tenfold. Like I'll run like an auction of like 50 items and two of them go unpaid. And that two is already just like half an hour worth of work to like try and sort through. And I
yeah,
don't have that kind of time. And then also just like the packing and shipping, like I could have my assistant come to help, but like just on the whole list of just like things that I have to do just to get to the next day or the next show, like auctions have not been top of mind for me. And one last thought too is last year when I did think about running an auction, I would just remind myself that I had a show coming up. And if I needed to move stuff fast, like there's other ways to sell rather than going directly to an auction, waiting for the auction to end and hoping that they pay. Whereas you just take it to a show and you can walk it to a vendor and like try to work out like the cash comp kind of deal. And there is like a way to work that in your favor. But there are other levers to pull for like cash flow with card shows. And I think that's another positive of that kind of arena.
and then do you have any experience with consigning ever, or is it kind of the same thing as? I mean, it's essentially still an auction. It's just someone else doing the heavy lifting.
It's the same. Like I'm sure like it would fare better for me from like a revenue generation perspective, but I don't know. I'd rather just sell it myself. Like I have it. Like yes, it'll like cost me more in fees, but like my overall sales number, like my total number of sales for my store goes up. I get positive feedback. Like that does mean something. Now, if I was like more of like a casual collector without the eBay store, I would 100% utilize consignments and auction houses. But with just the entire business, for me, it's just more straightforward and less like mental hoops to jump through to know that like I'm selling the item myself. It's coming from me. I have full control over it. Um, like it'll end up on my taxes. Like it's just a learning curve I don't want to deal with.
Yeah, that's fair. I have not consigned either. I guess technically I did when I pulled the Umbreon from Prismatic. I express graded it to PSA and it got a 9. And I just selected the option for the first time
Hmm.
so that they could auction it, because I think their fee structure was like if it went over 1,000 or over 1,500 or something, it was the fee was like noticeably lower. It was like 7% or something. And so it sold for like $1,500 at auction. I ended up getting paid like 1350 or 1370 or something. So it worked out. But I will just say I know that Probstein, I think, has a really good system for sealed, where like if your sealed is like, I don't know if it's just sealed, but your sealed is over $1,000, I believe they pay out like 95%, which is really good. But again, like Jason said, you kind of have to go through all the hoops of setting that up, and also depends on your goals. Again, like if you have a store and sales numbers to hit, maybe then that would be different. But if you're going for straight dollars, you might explore your options. But I think TCG Player 2 has a pretty good fee structure for like expensive items. But all right, Quilly, you just keep going. For in person, sometimes buyers see a card they wouldn't necessarily have searched for often or even on eBay and decide to buy it on the spot. Any principles for designing your inventory in person to appeal to cards you think people will be looking for and cards you think will be impulse buys? I think you've touched on this, but if you want to go into that a little more.
Yeah, this goes back to like the beginning when I mentioned like one of the philosophies for the store is like getting somebody to go, wow, I've never seen this before, or it like gets them to remember something about the table to come back next time, or even like ask for my Instagram so they can follow up with it later. Like one of the biggest like compliments that I would receive that means a lot is like, wow, you have really good stuff. Even if they don't buy anything, if they're just like, you have really good stuff, I've done my job. Like I feel like I've done my job.
Yeah.
Like in um, San Diego front row, there were people who a lot of people drove from LA for that show, which is a really good sign for the show, like for foot traffic. But there were people like separate buyers who like drove from LA just to come to my table in San Diego, and that meant a lot. That like they would travel that far, and to kind of go back to the question is like understanding like having a really good focus in designing that moat around other sellers for sourcing cards that they definitely don't have that you will have, and being really consistent about it. So what I mean by that is back in September of 2024, I did front row Pasadena, and my inventory was in a really bad spot at that time because a lot of my PSA subs were actually Cardass, 1997 Cardass, and I was working on my PSA 10 set. So none of that stuff was sellable that came back. So I had like nothing to bring to the show. So I'm like, okay, what can I ship from Japan that people might like? So I just went and bought a bunch of raw Kodo Kodo Mews and put them in the display. And that caught a lot of eyes because like not a lot of like basically every person was like, wow, I've never seen that many Mews in the display before. And every type of buyer that you can imagine took interest in it for whatever reason. And it's that kind of experience that I then apply to other areas of the showcase, whether it's like having sequential Nagabas or raw Nagabas available, or just some sort of like differentiation in card selection and achieving that show after show and being really consistent about the shows that you do, so you're making yourself accessible to people. That was kind of just like
You
word salad for
no,
like
it makes
reaching
sense.
accessibility.
The only thing I'd add as a question or pushback is, so then do you layer that, again, this probably comes from experience, but do you layer that uniqueness with liquidity as well, just based on things you know now? Like you Nagabas, for example, like, their EVs, Umbreons, whatever, they probably still sell pretty well, I'm sure, at shows where like they're niche enough where like probably not that many tables actually have them at this point, but they're still like, you essentially catch their attention and then are also rotating out of certain inventory. Same thing with the Korokoro use. So I guess I'm just saying that to say, don't just find things that you've never seen other people have before.
Yeah, like if that's a good thing to caution, because like let's say if I don't
I know
know.
I've been down those rabbit holes before where I'm like, this is the coolest Septile I've ever seen. And then it's like,
Yeah, like kind of go back to these celebration promos. Like nobody's gonna have these like at their table, but also nobody's gonna like want to buy them. Um, I don't. It's from experience. Like it's it's this combination. I don't know. It's like this reaching this intersection of collectability, popular characters, special releases, understanding the premium that comes with the condition rarity chase of certain cards, and the liquidity aspect is that accessible price point. And being able to combine all of that became like what the raw display case was for my shows, and also combining like the set identity collectability of certain cards. Like one of Drew's later questions was like around sourcing from Japan, and the personal anecdote of that is I had a buyer from one of the LA shows. He asked me to personally source him like this whole list of black and white secret rares for his binder. And I went ahead and did that because I think he had bought a different card off of me before and then just like asked me in passing if I could just find the rest for him.
did you, I guess just to touch on this, do you do that on a regular basis, or is that just kind of like as needed or a one-off thing?
For Drew, I'll find whatever Raiko he needs to find.
Okay. That
So
answers.
to sum it up, it's like semi-private. Like I will not source for somebody's stream. Like I'm not doing all the heavy lifting to source like 1,000 cards for somebody's stream and make like
I don't
10%.
know. So have you ever? I doubt he's watching this, but I've never met him either. It's just I followed him a year or two ago. His name's Hawaii 50 Ho.
Never heard of it.
He goes to Japan a few times a year as well, but he actually does this service, which is like people they need a minimum amount of spend to make it worthwhile for him and them. But he'll go after like very specific cards. Would you ever see yourself doing that in the future? If you could, in essence, get a fee for sourcing, or is that not something that's attractive to you? If you're, I guess, if you're already exposed to Japan in person and being able to find stuff, or do you think
And
that would add a layer of stress where you're just like, I don't, it's not, I'm not comfortable doing that.
I'll know when it's time to offer something like that when it's time. I think for now,
That's
like
fair.
there's a there's a fine line between like my personal bandwidth of sourcing for myself, and I think at the end of the day, like this is like my business. Like this is what pays my salary. This is how I pay rent in the Bay Area. This is how like I'm trying to save up for like a home
Yeah.
somewhere and high cost of living. Like
Don't
so,
come to Washington. It's
I
so
like
expensive here.
Washington.
I love
Uh,
it here, but it's so
yeah,
expensive.
it trust me. Like down here in the Bay, like anything in the South Bay all the way up to the city is like a mill, like baseline, and the house probably has issues, but
Yeah.
yeah, for now it's got to be just like what drives the core aspects of the business right now, and somewhere down the line I would never say never, but I think gradually if like other private sourcing deals go well, then maybe it's something to offer, but nothing that seriously consider at the moment.
I love that answer because, again, sometimes people just do things for money's sake. I've had tons of ideas where I've even had the consigning idea because I'm like, my Instagram's growing. Like, I'm sure I could help find things for people, but I'm like, what are the cons of this? I find something for them, it gets lost in the like. There's just too many cons to where I was like, I could see the downsides of it, and the actual consignment fee, unless you're doing it on like a large scale or mass buying, I don't think would make sense revenue wise, but that's just me. But it is a cool idea, and doing it for friends or whatever because you're already there,
Yeah.
and it maybe gives you sort of a challenge. But I think the only way that I would ever do it, if I ever got used to that, would be it would probably have to be mixed in with a lot of high end clients to where like that percentage actually makes sense. Like to your point, if you're able to find Masaki promos or whatnot, something that just doesn't pop up often, to where you can chunk out, like even if it's 5%, if you find a couple $1,000 cards, it can end up being like decent amount. Which one's the WC Pika?
It's the deck.
I'm thinking of Warner Bros for some reason. Oh, the World Championship. Okay, that is a good looking card. Jason, sell me some dusted vintage Pika promos. Thanks.
Still looking for that 1996 glossy Kodo Pikachu, and better than a PSA 7.
Which one is that?
Yvonne's got like a lot of like great Instagram content around that. It's the one that came in the magazine with the Jigglypuff.
Oh,
basically like the
is there an English version of that?
First one. There is. It's different release, different year.
It's a Black Star though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think the first 2 cards I ever got when I came back into the hobby were that Black Star and a non-hollow Dark Charizard off OfferUp, which I think I lost money on. So just a little history. Japanese King Jason. Do you hold anything sealed? Do you do anything with sealed?
Not really. Like if anything, it's just whatever I happen to stumble upon that is in stock. I'm not waiting online in the waiting rooms. It's on the floor, but it's like the booster case of the Journey Together and the Pokemon Center ETB. It's still like in the sealed box, but I just happened to like coincidentally load Twitter, and I was in Japan at the time. I was on Twitter going home that night, but then in America time, it was like the morning when they loaded the site. I'm like, okay, might as well click the link and give it a try, and I bought it. That's really it. And then I have like some, like at one point, what is like you could buy like 5 of these on Pokemon Center in Japan. So
for
it's just
MSRP.
whatever. Yeah, it's just whatever I can find.
But it's
like
not like an actual target for sourcing or
no.
Yeah. Okay.
I just buy it just to like rip with friends when we're bored or
I will add, as someone who primarily has English sealed, you don't for Jason's business model, I'm sure Quilly already knows, but like it's very much a burn and churn, or like you want to keep things moving, and it's hard to do that with sealed unless you have one distro access and two, like just the whole operation of packaging sealed on a large scale to make like $5-10 a box is not attractive to me. So I'm very much, I would rather be doing the burn and churn method, and then if you want to put some sealed on the side, put it away for a couple years with extra profits you have, that could work. But Pokeneer picked up a Korokoro Glossy Pika CGC 9 OC. So this card, do they distinguish? I mean, I'm just thinking of Yu-Gi-Oh, how they have glossy and wavy. Is there two distinguishable?
yeah. So the one in the Koto Koto magazine, basically like first release, one of first Pokemon card official releases, is the one that Yvonne's talking about, or the one that Pokeneer is talking about. And that one has just extreme condition rarity. Like, he can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's any PSA 10 in the population. Like the copies that I'll buy in Japan are like all fucked up. Like I just buy them because of the history.
Yeah.
Like you can find them for like 10-20 bucks at some places. I'll just buy it because it's history.
Said no PSA 10s.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to take Connor's question, and then maybe if anyone wants to ask any last minute questions to Jason, feel free to do so now. Otherwise, we're going to sort of wind down. I'm going to I just lost the chat. Hold on. Connor said, any stuff that's cheaper in Japan than in the American market outside of cards, like Pokemon plushies, playmats? No, they have Pokemon centers there, which they have a lot of the plushies and stuff. I don't know if they're cheaper.
Oh, wait. Outside of cards.
I think he's saying like other products, like that might
Pokemon
be
products.
Yeah, like maybe, I don't know if it's just exclusive to. Yeah, it's kind of
literally everything, because it's all
everything's cheaper.
Yeah. Like not even, it's not to be like snarky, but like the yen to dollar conversions can be friendlier.
Yeah.
Then it's just like you have to decide like, okay, well, yeah, I have to fly there.
The problem I had with being in Japan is it's too, I mean, very much like here, it's almost even more hyper consumerism there, to where it is so easy to spend money. Even when I'm going in those stores like Loft and those other ones where you'll go in a 7-story mall or whatever, and every little shop has all these cutesy little like I literally bought a ramen bowl that I've never used, but it's like I love it and it looks great, but like there at a certain point I was just buying things to buy things or because I liked how they looked. But yeah, you gotta be careful.
And once you use it for the first time, then you'll be like, that's why I bought it.
Yeah, there's a couple things that I definitely need to start using. Okay, let's see. I don't see anything else. Pokeneer, very few PSA 9s under 20. First TCG Pokemon card. I did not know that. So that's pretty consistent with like, I know there's like I don't know if they show up in the Korokoro magazines, but the same thing with the mangas. I know there's like first appearances in like the old magazines and stuff, and there's some like significance to that, I think. But I don't know if this is kind of the same thing where is this like the first public Pokemon card that was released?
It's the first public like Pokemon TCG official release. That one, and I believe the Jigglypuff. I think they both came in the magazine together.
TCG meaning not like vintage
not
Prism. Yeah, okay, gotcha. Okay, well, I think if there's nothing else, we can call it there. I had a handful of other questions to ask you, but I feel like we kind of exhausted a good amount of topics, and I don't know. I feel like this was a good conversation. You clearly have a good like business mindset, and just like again through experience, it has sort of shaped itself into something that's sustainable and um, hopefully can continue to grow and get you to your goals for the future. So
Yeah, whatever those are, like even I'm still figuring it out too.
you have
Like
more goals in Pokemon than you do in real life.
maybe we'll see where it goes. Obviously, thank you so much for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's a good sign when there's like still stuff to get to, and
Yes.
maybe that's for another time. But my door is always open. Like now you know where to find me.
Yeah, no, I would love to have you back on. And I think we should do one with Jake as well. We could do all three of us. Because I'm sure he has a lot of other questions that he wants to ask as well, even though you guys see each other fairly regularly, it sounded like.
Yeah, let me
On
know.
streams from
I'd be
YouTube.
down. He has a lot of good, just like contrasting points that like are just from a different point of view from mine. Like you probably tell a lot of mine are just like business focused. I
Right.
think we're also like rooted, like the philosophy is still like very, very much collector based. Like almost like none of like my purchases are like based on like how much revenue can this drive. Because then if so, there are so many other plays I could be doing.
Right.
Just choose not to. So I think that kind of conversation would just be good because like he does a lot of English and I don't, and that's probably why like our conversations go the way they do. So I'm down whenever. Just let me know.
Okay. That sounds good. We will be signing off, everyone. Thank you for coming out. Again, Jason's links to his Instagram are in the description below. It has links to his eBay where you can buy stuff from him and check things out. And then also his Substack, which he's going to end up adding to at some point.
Keep me accountable.
Yeah.
Thank you, Zach.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.